I'm Emily Gibson, co-founder of ATX TV.
And I'm Laura Kincaid, Director of Operations.
It's day 10, and to be honest, I'm not really sure how we got here, 10 days into 10 seasons of ATX TV Festival.
Well, now whose idea was that?
Not mine.
Oh, are you sure about that one?
Okay, it's mine.
It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but we made it together.
Hashtag TV together.
Now, I know we're all mega fans of Schitt's Creek because we're human beings. So to say that Team ATX was really excited about SurrealEstate is a bit of an understatement. And I just cannot tell you how much it delivers. We love it.
Even me, who was terrified of Ghost and maybe did have to watch it during the day with all the lights on. But that being said, one of our favorite things about writing ATX TV is that we get to help people discover new shows. And this one, well, all we're going to say is you're welcome. So with that, we're going to bring out Jeannine Amber from Essence, who will be moderating.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeannine Amber, and I'm here today with Sarah Levy and Tim Rozon, who are starring in SurrealEstate, which is the new show on Syfy, premiering July 16th at 10 p.m. I'm very excited to be speaking to you guys. Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
How are you? Where are you guys? I know we're all remote right now. So where are you guys right now?
I'm in LA.
Yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm in northern Quebec.
Yay. I'm Canadian also.
Yay!
You see my little maple leaf behind?
I did.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so I was super excited to speak with you guys. I have so many questions. First of all, I know you were filming in Newfoundland during COVID. So can you, for the people who are not Canadian, can you tell everybody what it's like out there and, you know, also what it meant to be filming out there during COVID?
Tim, do you want to go for it?
You go. I mean, we were actually really lucky because the East Coast really had a handle on COVID.
Yeah.
So there was like no cases. So like we were like the one place kind of probably in North America at that time where we could actually kind of still go for brunch and go for dinner, and it was allowed. And it's not something we did weekly, but I mean, we definitely partaked in a brunch or two, which was kind of nice to feel kind of normal. Because
yeah,
that you can definitely feel it's just not, you know, I can't even tell you what half our crew looks like, to be honest, which is really unfortunate, just because, you know, everybody with the mask and everybody was so professional. Even on the last day when everybody's saying goodbye, it's not like we were saying goodbye, showing each, the mask stayed on. And so it was nice to kind of go for brunch. So that was like a little normal.
It totally, like I was coming from LA, and LA was terrible at that time in the summer. It was a complete lockdown. We couldn't do anything. So going to Newfoundland, it was nice to be home in Canada and to make this show there. And as Tim said, to not know what anybody's bottom half of their face looked like. I was like, whoa, you have a mustache? That is not what I thought your face was gonna look like.
Yeah, it's chins that always got me with people. COVID started. When I see someone's chin that I've met someone with a mask, the chin never matches what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
That's interesting because you know, so many of us during COVID, we just stayed inside and we didn't actually meet a lot of new people. So I guess meeting new people and only seeing half of their face would be, they become unrecognizable once they take that off.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk about the show. I was just fascinated because it's interesting to see stuff that was filmed while, you know, the pandemic was raging. So that was really interesting. But Tim, why don't you tell us what the show is about?
I mean,
sum it up in one sentence.
It's about a team of real estate, I would say, specialists. Mm-hmm. That they sell the houses that no one else can, or probably that nobody else wants to. Mm-hmm. We've got the super ringer. We've got Sarah Levy. I mean, you know, so, you know, we specialize in haunted, possessed houses.
But what is so great about your characters, the way you, like all great salesmen, sort of repackage it and say, you know, they're stigmatized properties. The scene where you're sort of explaining, you know, how you like had focus groups to come up with the acronym for your company. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, there's
Thank you. It took me 4 days to learn that monologue.
And Tim had, I mean, the pages and pages of just like dialogue that was just technical jargon that we would kind of swap back and forth when we'd each have like a bad episode where we had a ton of dialogue. He, especially off the top, it was like I would go through and be like, oh, good luck. This is a lot to learn. It was, I mean, he did it perfectly, but it was it was intense off the top.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot too, which it's made me feel better, if I'm being honest. You know, I'm used to playing character like Mutt shit. Mutt didn't say much. Loved that about Mutt. Loved it. Luke talks. Luke talks a lot. Talks a lot about stuff that I have no idea about either. You know, ghosts, selling houses. They've got their own lingo, both of them.
Yeah. I noticed there was a lot of real estate lingo, which, you know, but the characters are so different than the characters you both played on Schitt's Creek. And Sarah, I saw an interview in which you were saying that one of the ways you got into character with Twyla was through wardrobe. You were talking about like paisley tops and the beat up sneakers. And in this show, you know, like Tim, you're all suited up. The opening scene, with the flipped up collar and the rain, and you know, you take on such an air of I mean, you're so slick, you know, compared to Mutt, who's all bearded and scruffy.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah, with you, when you were speaking to the other real estate agent at one point, and you snapped at her and you said, "Shut your hole." And I thought, that's really not something Twyla would say at all. So how did you find getting into these completely different characters? You know, how did you find that to be?
I felt like kind of the same process. It's amazing what hair and makeup and a wardrobe can do when you know, look at yourself completely done and you really feel like a different person. And that always, to me, is the best way for me to get into character. I feel like things don't really come alive until that happens, but it was so nice it is such a transition from a character like Twyla to a character like Susan. She gets all, you know, she has better clothes, she has better hair, there's some makeup on her. It was like really fun to actually sit in the hair and makeup trailer this time and come up with some very kind of chic looks. But it was a departure, I think, for both of us in a very fun way.
Yeah, 100%. It is really interesting. It's like it takes all the departments that come together, which is great because it makes it easier. Because that character, at first, one of my draws to it was I knew it was challenging for me to do it because I never just took on that much of a workload, to be honest, in the character of Luke. But the challenge was exciting. But once I started getting the wardrobe and the new fresh face, and then the way they shot it, I could see, and it was like, oh, okay, this is all coming together, and it kind of came together nice.
Yeah, really nice.
You know, I actually was speaking to Paul Fox, the director. You know, I've known him for decades, and he, when we were younger, was a huge Stephen King fan and a huge horror movie fan. And, you know, so when I saw the opening you know, had that whole kind of Exorcist vibe to it, and then all of these other moments, and I could see all of his influences. And I'm wondering, like, were you guys also horror movie fans before you started working on this?
I was not. I like horror movies. I like in theory. I like the idea of like, ooh, let's sit down and get some popcorn and chips and watch a horror movie. And I'm like, great, yeah, good idea. And then I sit down and then it starts and I'm like, this is not actually a good idea. I'm this the entire time. My ears are plugged. And I like, my brother forced me to watch Paranormal Activity one time and I like cried at the end of, like, it was just like, I don't do well with horror. It's not my genre to watch. It gets in my psyche. It's too much for me.
Yeah, same with me. I've seen like Scream, I liked, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's
Yeah,
about as
yeah.
horror as I go. I
Yeah.
don't go past that. I remember like when I was a kid, there was like my brother would pick the movie night and we'd have to watch, there was like zombies eating brains, and I'd last like 10 minutes and be like, this is why I don't hang out with my brother. I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
So, so one of the questions I did ask Paul, because you know we're friends, I said, so who was most difficult to work with? And he said, the dog. The dog. The dog was supposed to be super scary, but it was wagging its tail, and it was a super friendly dog.
We had some like our biggest issues that were, you know, difficulties, divas on set were, I think, the animals.
Yeah, I was not even worried for a second that you were going to say one of the actors, because I was like, I can't think of anybody on this cast that it was, you know what I mean? I was like, not even worried. I did hear about the dog. I wasn't there that day.
I wasn't there.
Heard about the dog.
The dog was supposed to be very scary, but it was, you know
There
how
might have been a
Canadians
bird.
are.
I worked with a crow in the second episode, and the crow, they had basically come out, the handler had come out to give us all a debrief, and this was midnight. Like, we started shooting it at 12:30, and she was like, just so you know, don't look at the crow, don't touch the crow, don't be in the crow's eye line, don't get in its way. It may or may not do what you want it to do. It was like this whole like, are we safe? Like, can we be in this? Is this okay? And the crow did nothing that it was supposed to do, like zero. And it took 2 hours for them to get like, I'm curious to see if they even used anything from that. Like, we had like a little fake crow, and the real crow just didn't cut it.
It's funny that you're working with a crow again, because crows were also such a big part
Of course, sure. You know, I just put that together just right this second. You're right.
I mean, of all the animals to have to work with twice, crows are sort of
I should have had Catherine O'Hara give me a little insight into what working with crows was like.
So the other thing I thought was interesting in terms of how it was filmed. There's a scene where there's all sorts of stuff flying around, the room, which I guess is going to happen a lot because it's about homes that have other things going on. They're haunted, or there are other mysterious forces. So did you shoot a lot of scenes with things floating around? Because I understand it wasn't always CGI. Sometimes there were people throwing stuff around, like old school.
In that scene, it was just two people on either side throwing things to each other and catching them. That was like, it was just people.
Well, the only difference this time was in between takes, we had to de-COVID the props that were thrown between the practical effects. They had to have been, cleaned in between. That was a new twist that I wasn't used to. I'm used to crazy stuff on sets with practical effects, but that was a new one.
It sounds hilarious, and it sounds way more fun than we'll put the special effects in after, and I love the image of you shooting the scene with two guys tossing around a head of lettuce. Yeah. I love that. But in fact, Paul had said that before you guys shot this, that he had looked at The Exorcist, in that scene where all this stuff is flying around. Well, there are multiple scenes, but that's how they used to do back in the day. They would have people throw, like, a big fan, and then people throwing stuff in front of the fans so that it would fly through the air. And it does give the whole production sort of a different feel. And I love that scene. Was one of my one of my favorites.
It's not all CGI.
Yeah, and you, Tim, you did also, it almost underscores sort of the coolness of your character, where you just sort of like, would bob and weave as these things were flying through the air.
Yeah, Yeah. So oddly enough, too, in that scene, the pork chop that we threw the dog that wasn't an angry dog wasn't a pork chop, because a pork chop for some reason doesn't look like a pork chop on TV. So we had to use a tuna steak because the tuna steak on television looked more like a pork chop.
Interesting. I did not know that.
That is interesting.
Oh.
I thought it looked like tuna, and I thought, oh, I didn't know tuna looked like.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just kidding. It looked like what it was supposed to look like. But yeah, and then when the woman dusted, yeah.
Well, Tennille's a vegan too, so she wasn't loving it.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
they couldn't make like a tofu piece of pork.
Yeah.
They actually tried, and this was a huge thing. You're not wrong. They did try, but supposedly the tuna steak looked the best on camera. And I just remember it kept coming back to the tuna steak, and then they said, okay, we'll do a fake thing, and then but the tuna looked best. They said, okay, we'll have her throw the fake one, and then we'll do the close-up on the real tuna.
Oh, wow.
A day in the life, guys. It's just people don't know. It's just real. A day in the life.
How did you guys get involved in this project? Like who got signed on to do this first? Walk me through the whole process.
As far as I know, Tim was signed on first because when I had put myself on tape for it, and then when I had found out that I got the part and I didn't know who was playing Luke, and then Tim texted me, and that was how I found out that he was involved. And at that point, which I have told him, like, it's an obvious yes. Like when you know that the person that you're going to be working opposite for a good amount of time is such a wonderful person, a great actor, somebody that's like easy to get along with, and the fact that we knew each other, it was sold.
Yeah, exactly the same, but the opposite. I auditioned, and then I got the part, and then the first thing I said was, okay, well, who's Susan? And they said Sarah Levy. And then I was like, oh my gosh. So I literally texted you right away, because same thing. I was just like, okay, I mean, how could I got to do this now? How, like, it was just such a like, okay, great. It's just, what a sigh of relief. Okay, I know who I'm going to be spending the majority of my time with, and they're great.
Yeah.
So sign me up. It was actually a real, it was a plus.
Big time. Yeah.
So it wasn't like you found out you were going to be working together and like, oh, damn. It wasn't that.
Luckily, no. Although I'm sure, that happens to people, and I feel sad for those people, because that was.
I was happy, and then I kept calling you too when we started getting the scripts, and I started seeing like more and more. So I'd be able, at least I'd have somebody to talk to. But how are we gonna do this? Do you see how much stuff we have to do?
Yeah, you'd be like, we have so much dialogue. Like, oh God, I haven't seen any.
Like, how much of this story did you know when you first got signed on? When you first signed on to do it, like, do they give you like a whole, like, the whole arc, or you just sort of know?
I just had the first script the pilot that we got to read for our audition, and that was all I knew, and like the storyline.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was as easy to cast, which was I think luckier for me. Because I had a lot of Zoom meetings with George, our creator. Yeah. And so he gave me a lot of insight into the character for trying to, because I couldn't screen test. I was filming at the time too, so I don't even know if I would have been able to actually now with COVID at the time. So I was doing a lot of Zoom test auditions and readings. I think I did 3. And so I kept getting different feedbacks and different notes, and also different insights to the character. So that helped a lot, actually. So I think a little bit more than everybody else going in, but same thing. I think like I only had the pilot, maybe the second episode I had on me.
Yeah. So as actors, how do you audition through Zoom? Like, do you ever do scenes with other people, or you just, how does that work?
Just like this.
I've actually never done a Zoom audition. When I put myself on tape for this, and then I didn't hear anything for 2.5 months. And then the next thing I heard was that I got the part. So I didn't feel like I didn't meet anybody. I never got to like interact. We didn't do any like chemistry tests or anything. So I was, in a way, I almost wish we had done something just so that we, you know, meeting Tim aside, like meeting everybody else wasn't just like the day before we started shooting. But it's weird to like, it's hard enough to just have conversations over Zoom, let alone act, because it's such a physical thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I'm so curious about this. I can't, you know, obviously I'm as somebody who's not in the industry. All I know about auditions is what I've seen on TV shows and in movies, but it looks like it's in person. So,
Yeah.
so Tim, how was it for you to get this part through? You know, without
Like,
being
yeah, like was someone
Well,
reading your
it was
lines?
like it was difficult, but it was like it was also like I was filming at the same time. So at the same time, it's like I don't have time to think about this guy. This like so much dialogue, and I'm like, man, this is like the fourth time. I'm like, either you like me, you don't like me. But at the same part, I understand, and you got to do it. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna suck this up, and I'll just learn another scene, and we're gonna do it. And then I would go and I would just do the best of my abilities. And then the last one actually. They sent me 2 new scenes. One was the 2 of us at the batting cage,
Yeah.
great scene.
Yeah.
And then the other one was, I won't give too much away, but it was pretty dramatic. And it was about a 2-page monologue, to be honest. And they wanted to do the Zoom the next day, another Zoom reading test at 3:00 the next day. And I was just like, you know what? I'm busting this thing out right now. I was in the mood that night, and I'm like, I was kind of feeling vulnerable anyway. And I'm like, I can do this scene right now. And I just hooked my little phone to that thing, did the whole 2-page monologue and sent them that. And I said, man, if they still want to see more, then I'll go back. And then they called me, someone wrote me back right away and they said, hold on Zoom. And I knew what that meant. I knew, okay, you did a good tape. You might be good here. And then that was finally how it ended. But other than that, yeah, it was Zoom meetings and working it and talking about the characters. I was very lucky. Danishka was there. So she's amazing. And I had worked with her before. She had directed me before. So she's great. I will say this, having watched the show, even though we never screen test, the chemistry of this cast is incredible. It's like, I don't like awards for that. It's great.
I can't believe how like the chemistry, like I can't believe the chemistry that we have. And everyone is so different, like so unique in their characters and in person. And it just works so well. Like with just gels.
Yeah.
Feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so surprising that none of you auditioned together. You were not in the same room until you actually got on set. So,
yeah.
Wow, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of chemistry, so the 2 of you obviously Schitt's Creek. Now there is, to me, I see like a little bit of tension between your 2 characters in this show. And I know you can't really give away what happened, but can you give away? No, do you guys ever like to I feel like you should be, I would like to see you guys to are fighting ghosts in this show.
Throughout the season, at least, we just kind of are business partners. And it's actually really nice. Like I love their relationship in that it's this, for now at least, this kind of platonic friendship. I know there's like undercurrents of things, and I'm sure there's a direction they want it to go at some point, but I think I just loved their personal relationship and the way they can banter back and forth, and they kind of give each other crap here and there, and they know that they can razz each other and be vulnerable with each other as romantic pulse for now. And I kind of really appreciated that. I think sometimes when you rush into things, it's like it's over too soon. And I just love the relationship that they developed. So I just like living in that right now.
Me too. Well said.
Oh.
Yeah, well said.
So we may have to wait for season 2 before you guys. I'm rooting for the two of you. One of the really interesting things I noticed in the pilot is that we really get a hint at the you guys both have this very complicated backstory, you know, and I won't give anything away with your character, Sarah, but you know, we really see there's a lot of stuff that has gone on in your past, and is some of that going to come into the show later? Like
we see her past kind of unravel before our eyes, and see a really nice arc and a growth that happens within her, and she kind of finds her strength and her confidence, and isn't afraid of her past anymore by the end of the first season, which is really exciting. There's a lot to kind of cover there.
Yeah, that's always like the really exciting thing with the pilot, is when there's just, you know, a little bit of foreshadowing, but you don't know are we really going to get fully into this? What's going to happen? How's this issue going to complicate things? And the same with your character, Tim, you know, Luke, like we see, you know, as he says, I don't believe in ghosts pretty early on to one of the clients. You know, there's a whole other bunch of stuff that seems to be going on with your past as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about the show is I think we'll see each member of the team kind of deal with their own personal demons, which in some way are a lot scarier than the supernatural demons we deal with on the show. Which is another thing I love about the show, is that each episode, it's like you said before, is there going to be stuff flying around in each episode? I don't think so, because that's what I loved about each episode. Each story was like its own little movie, because each house we had a different
issue.
To deal with.
So, okay, one last question for you, Tim. I know that you also are a restaurateur, and you have 2 restaurants in Montreal. Mm-hmm. So you have this business, and you're also an actor. So which one of them is your side hustle? Which one is the primary job?
Well, thanks to COVID, you know, I've been super lucky. I worked a lot during COVID, which is I'm just, you know, lucky. I'm not a fan of pandemics in any way. So, I am a fan of working. So my restaurants have been closed, to be honest. So COVID kind of decided that for me.
Tim's restaurants, if anybody is ever in Montreal, they are 2 of the best in, dare I say, all of Canada. They're like, not just because he's my friend, they are not to be missed. They're incredible. If anybody happens to be in Montreal, if you can get a reservation, because let's face it, that's a big problem. If you can get one, go.
Tim, tell us the name of the restaurants for anybody who's finally when
this turned into the whole. It's great. Le Garde Manger and Le Bremner in Old Montreal.
Thank you both so much. Again, everybody, check out SurrealEstate on July 16th, 10 p.m. Eastern on the Syfy channel.